This is Fit to Succeed in partnership with NordicFitnessEducation.com with host Ben Pratt.
Are you feeling excessively tired during the day? Are you sitting at your desk nodding off constantly? Do you feel tired after you eat something? Do you go to the movies with a partner and you instantly fall asleep in a cool, dark room? Do you get drowsy at the traffic lights driving the car? These are all kind of signs of what we call daytime sleepiness, and this might indicate that there's something going on overnight with the person that may not be getting enough sleep.
Welcome to another episode of the Fit to Succeed podcast. I'm your host, Ben Pratt, and today we are blessed to have with us a man from down under, although perhaps his accent might confuse you a little because he doesn't sound like he's from Australia. He is coming all the way from Perth today. It's Dr. Ian Dunican. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Dunican.
G'day, Ben.
You're faking me out, you are.
I am. See,
Right.
when you float down the River Shannon, you keep floating sometimes, and you start off in Athlone and you end up in Western Australia. So yes,
Absolutely.
I'm the Australian with the Athlone accent.
Oh, nice one.
From
So
Ireland.
harking all the way from Ireland. Fantastic. Now, Dr. Dunican is the director of Melia's Consulting, another website called Sleep for Performance, and he also works along with the University of Western Australia where he did his PhD. It's going to be fantastic to have some time to talk today a little bit more about the impact that sleep can have on fitness and physical performance. And so with that particular intro, Ian, I want to ask you a question right off the bat to see if you're awake at this point of your day, all right? And that is, if you had just 1 minute to impress upon somebody else the importance of sleep for their fitness and performance, what would you say?
This is great business here, Ben, the old elevator speech. So what I would say is, for those people who sleep less than 7 hours, and the less you sleep, i.e. 6, 5, and 4 hours, you're going to increase your risk of developing health issues such as cardiovascular disease, cancers, diabetes, and so on. Performance-wise, you're going to have poor reaction time, you're more likely to get injured, and you're more likely to get sick as an athlete. Conversely, the more you sleep past 7 hours, so 7 to 9 is a rough range, so we take that as a kind of a middle point. The more we sleep past 7 hours and the greater we go, the more likely you are to have less health issues long-term, the ones I mentioned, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancers, and so on. The more likely you are to have better performance. So your reaction time is going to be improved, your sprint time, your physical performance, and overall your performance is going to be better.
All right, so it sounds like it plays a pretty important role in, and we should perhaps be paying attention to it more than we currently are.
For sure, yeah, definitely.
Right, now on the next question, I want to ask why you chose to dig down that rabbit hole, to go not just to study sleep, because there are quite a lot of people out in the world who study sleep, but you linked it together with fitness and physical performance. What was your motivation to go down that route?
Right, so it's a bit like when you walk into a bookshop, Ben. Sometimes you go in looking for a book, but the book then chooses you, which always happens to me. So it's a bit of a long story, and I didn't really have a goal of getting into the area of sleep and performance. It was completely by accident. And so approximately about 14 years ago, I was working in a mining company in a business improvement role. And predominantly I was focused on health, safety, or human performance type projects that enabled productivity. So the issue was we were having, I suppose, difficulty in managing the complexities of fatigue risk management in an organization with productivity. It is a business, legislative requirements, and so on. And so there's lots of different kind of variables getting put into the equation. And I went in there as a problem solver to basically work with a number of general managers to try and come to a consensus about how we should tackle this problem. And that's really where it originated. And it sort of snowballed from there. Given my background in sort of long distance running, rugby in my youth, being an operational military soldier as well for a number of years in Ireland before I came over here, and my sort of personal keen interest in keeping fit and healthy, it kind of added to it. So I progressed in that role, problem solving. That actually led to a full-time role as a project in that mining company, ended up being a national role, and then ended up being a global role in that mining company. So
Wow.
I was a global advisor for what we call fatigue/human performance in that business. Along the way, as I developed my own expertise, very much self-taught or self-directed, collaborating with universities, other academics, other practitioners, I started delving more into the sleep and performance research. So you're talking about 2007, 8, 9, 10, where it was still really in its infancy. There wasn't that many papers around. And so I was getting questions from maybe some sporting clubs or individuals, and kind of exploring this area.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually, after doing a master's in business and a master's in engineering, with a health and safety undergrad associate degree as well, I thought, like, I'm going to kind of just push this in a bit of a different way. So after 10 years in a mining company, I decided to go back and do my PhD with elite athletes. I was quite fortunate at the time because it synced up really well with the Western Force looking for some help here around Super Rugby. The AIS had kind of reconfigured or reformatted the combat center for combat sports. And given I did karate as a kid, was involved in Japanese jiu-jitsu for a number of years, and then Brazilian jiu-jitsu, being a brown belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, sort of, and at the time being a blue belt, but it all sort of kind of came together. So my keen interest in sleep and performance, my military background, my sort of combat sports background, and my willingness or keenness to do a PhD, and with my knowledge previously in playing rugby back in Ireland, I had this dream PhD that I kind of embarked on at, I think, at the age of 37. So
wow. That is great.
yeah,
Fantastic.
it was quite nice, So I didn't set out in high school going, I want to be a sleep and performance scientist / chronobiologist. I went out of school going, I want to go to the pub and have a good time, like most 17, 18-year-olds in Ireland. So yeah,
Indeed.
I wasn't a star academic. If anybody went to school with me, you'd probably see my name now with qualifications after and laugh and go, that must be somebody else. I have changed.
All right, nice one. It's quite a shift, to be honest, to have gone into engineering and business, and then to end up, now working with athletes who are struggling with sleep. I mean, that's quite a shift. You wouldn't really put those two things together. I just wonder, as a supplementary thought, do you find that all that the thinking processes that you develop through your engineering and business have any positive influence on how you manage your athletes?
100%. I think, like, when people look at this, they go, how did you jump like from an MBA to a master's in engineering? My undergrad is in education, the associate degrees in health and safety. Like, you're just like a frog bouncing around here from one thing to the other. And actual fact, there's a lot of commonality between the things, and lots of things are complementary. And so today in my work, so my consulting business, Melius, works with industry such as mining, oil and gas, agriculture, rail, and we work with them in broader occupational health areas. Then we have, as a subset of that, we work with elite athletes and teams on sleep and performance specifically. And then we have sleep for performance, and then we do research with a couple of different universities as well. But I actually think there's a lot of crossover in how you approach a problem in science and engineering and in business. And I think what business has helped in my science is it has given me a method or a means to articulate the problem and look at it more holistically about what is the business case for solving this problem. I think too often in science, particularly in the biology fields, we just look at this is the impact of people, and that's great. But trying to articulate that in the context of a business where it can enable productivity, reduce errors, reduce downtime, and more importantly, reduce additional costs. I think looking at holistically, the business aspect has really helped me to do that. Also, as well, when I'm having a conversation with a client, I understand what's driving their business economically from studying economics. I understand how these market forces are affecting them. They may be under cost pressures. They may be under pressures to find different solutions that are more innovative in nature around procedures, as opposed to more technology solutions where we have to spend millions of dollars on capital. So definitely just been a crossover there. And the same with studying engineering as well. I think it's all kind of fed into the one thing, and it definitely is complementary. And I think no matter what you learn in your life, I think even if I did a history degree, I would find something that would actually come in and help me in what I do today. And I think whilst people, like I say, might see me as a frog jumping around from one subject to the other, and what I've done, Ben, in my life is just really done the things that I've been interested in and what I've enjoyed, and not worried about kind of the money. And that's come afterwards. So I've really just kind of chased what the next thing is. Like at the moment, I want to try and improve my mathematics. So I bought like some maths books this week. Right? And my wife is going, you're not doing a maths degree or, whatever. But like things like maths and physics at the moment are things I'd like to understand more about. I haven't got a clue, but I'm going to have a look and see. And that might last a week or it might last 2 years. So let's see what happens.
Well, best of luck with the maths book. I can imagine as well, if you went doing a degree in history, you'd probably find all those key people in history who struggled with their sleep.
Well, it's interesting because last season, I actually, on my podcast, I had a guy called Professor Roger Ekirk, Kirk or Kirch, and he has written some books on the history of sleep and sort
Oh,
of how
really?
it's changed over
Wow.
time. Yeah. So if you see a lot of these articles online about, biphasic sleep, so 2 sleep periods, and people sleeping for like 4 or 5 hours, getting up, putting some wood on the fire, maybe, having sex, talking, whatever they might be doing in that culture, and then going back to sleep. Roger is the guy that kind of found that in the literature. He's at the Virginia Tech University, if I recall correctly.
All right,
So
we'll
yeah.
have to link to that in the show notes so the listeners can head on and listen to that as well. Now,
And there's also another paper in there as well that I probably should send to you and put in the show notes, where we talk about Greek philosophers referencing the initial hypothesis about what sleep was for. For example, a very quick one is,
go for it.
earlier on in sort of Greek philosophy, they thought that when you ate food, that the vapors from the food kind of traveled up through your esophagus into your brain, and these vapors made you feel sleepy,
Oh,
and
really?
that's what brought on sleep. Because they correlated this with after lunch, this post lunch dip, or siesta time. They thought, well, I've eaten food, the most logical thing is cause and effect. I've eaten food, that's why I feel sleepy. Or after dinner that night, a few hours later, oh, I've eaten so much, this is what's going on. So they actually thought that there was a cause and effect from the food, which we
well,
now
I guess
know is not true.
that's the scientific method, isn't it? Observe
Yeah,
and try to explain what you observe, which is what they were
exactly.
doing. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, let's try and get into some of the detail here if we can. And obviously, everybody, I would imagine, knows from experience, you have a night where you don't sleep so well, you probably feel tired the next day. And it's logical, therefore, to think that sleep is going to have a negative impact on performance physically if you're exercising or competing because you're tired. But as I understand it, there's much more to it than that. I wonder if we could start to get into the detail of how sleep can have, or lack of sleep can have, a negative impact on performance levels.
Sure. I think, Ben, before we talk about the impact of sleep, it's important to understand what exactly is sleep and how it's structured across the night. So I think firstly, we still don't know the true root cause or reason or rationale for sleep. But what we do know is that, like engineering, when we take things away, like reverse engineering the problem, we know that certain things are affected. So most people, actually every person, sleeps at night. We're all designed to sleep at night. It's what's called diurnal animals. We're not meant to be awake at night and asleep during the day. Now, many people will say, no, I can change, I can adapt. You actually can't. We are meant to be awake during the day and asleep at night. So it's really important to note that first up. Secondly, let's look at a sleep period where we'll take 11 p.m. right through till 7 a.m. the next morning, kind of a midpoint of, or representation of normal person's sleep. That sleep period of about 8 hours is broken into 2 main chunks. So in the first half of the night, we're going to go through predominantly non-REM periods of sleep. And in the second half of the night, we're going to go through predominantly REM sleep.
So rapid eye movement sleep, yeah.
Rapid eye movement, yeah, not the band, which was in around the 90s, which you and I would remember.
I remember them.
Yes, they were some shining happy people. That's how I lost my religion as well. So non-REM sleep at the start of the night, and then we got the REM sleep towards the back end of the night. So non-REM sleep is really important for physical repair and recovery, and REM sleep is really important for kind of psychological repair. So it's like a reboot of your brain. So a lot of people go, which type of sleep is most important? The answer is both are important. However, the body will always prioritize REM sleep. So if you've gone through a period of weeks and weeks of sleep deprivation, which we see with shift workers, military operatives, the body will have what's called REM rebound. So you will have lots of kind of crazy dreams, and you'll be, coming back from this lack of sleep. Now, whilst those non-REM periods are predominantly in the first half of the night, you will oscillate in and out of different stages of sleep. So many people may have heard of these. So you have stage 1, which is light sleep. Then you have stage 2. Then you have stage 3. And then you go into REM sleep. Now, stage 3 is deep sleep. A common misconception is that deep sleep is REM sleep. That's not actually true. The deep sleep, the delta wave sleep, is stage 3 sleep. This is about 20% of the night. And this is where growth hormone is released. So really important for physical repair and recovery. So when stage 3 sleep is reduced, then we're going to see an impact on
physical recovery.
Physical recovery as well. And there's been a few studies out there that have shown that when you deprive people of these sleep periods of non-REM and REM, especially the longer they go, then you're going to see the effects. So non-REM is going to come in physical performance issues, and REM sleep is going to result in sort of cognitive or reaction time or decision making. And particularly in laboratory-based studies, even in non-athletes, we see this even more when we can really chronically when we can sleep deprive people chronically over time. So there's some classic studies that get done and have been replicated numerous times where we put somebody into a laboratory and we keep them awake for like 7 days, and they're just like zombies at the end of it. Then there's other studies where you have like somebody getting no sleep, somebody getting 4 hours sleep, 6 hours, 8 hours sleep. And those studies are really clear and they show the actual impact on your reaction time. But what's interesting is that parallel to this, and as your reaction time sort of diminishes over time and you're actually getting worse, or your lapses are increasing, the person's subjective or their own idea of their sleep stays the same.
All right.
So we're very good at humans kind of going, this is normal, this is how I sleep, I get by. This is why so many people say, all I need, Ian, is 6 hours a night and I'm fine. And they say that because they cope with it. And we're very good at humans at coping with low amounts of sleep.
Right.
However, what's happening is they're not actually reaching their true potential. Now, conversely, people will say, and probably people listening to this will say, yeah, but that's all well and good. When I sleep 8 hours, I actually feel worse. I feel more groggy. I've got more issues. You may feel like that for weeks or months on end if you've been chronically sleep deprived for years, because now we're getting that REM rebound and the body's trying to make it up. We know that from long-term shift workers, 20 years, their sleep is impacted and disturbed and disrupted for up to 2 years after they finish doing shift work.
Wow, that is
So you may
crazy.
have to invest some time in actually getting your sleep right, and it might take a serious amount of time. So a lot of people kind of just get by on the 6 hours sleep, which you do. So 95% of the population needs between 7 to 9 hours sleep. That leaves us with 5%. Let's say 2.5% of those people are going to need more than 9. That leaves 2.5%. Let's break that again roughly. You're going to, another 1% is going to need between 6 and 7, and less than 1% or 1.5% is going to need anywhere from less than 6%. And this has been shown time and time again. When people make time for sleep, they actually get more sleep, and over time they actually feel better. So we now know that, either chronically depriving people of sleep or restricting them of sleep periods, or restricting phases of sleep, or kind of grouping of sleep like non-REM and REM, we know that's going to have an impact, and the impact is going to be different depending on what you're actually restricting.
That's really helpful, I think, to get a good sense of how the different phases of sleep impact the way that you feel. I really like that clear discussion around the deeper phases help to restore us physically, and then the lighter REM sleep helps to, I would imagine REM is more dream state sleep is how people would probably relate to that. That helps to cognitively help us function better. So with that in mind, obviously we preface this with the question of how sleep might impact performance. Would it be more appropriate to ask the question of if different phases of sleep are lost, so if there's less deep sleep, how might that affect performance? Or there's a lack of REM sleep or dream sleep, how might that affect performance?
Yeah, so we see like non-REM sleep, or your examples there, stages 1 to 3, we're going to see that the next day in physical repair and recovery. So people may not be, and we mightn't see it in one day, but we might see it over a course of, numerous days or weeks where it's going to be impacted. So inflammation is going to be higher. People may have a higher propensity to be getting sick. Things like immunoglobulin responses are going to be, IGF. So inflammation is going to be higher. More upper respiratory airway infections is going to occur as well. So we'll see more of those type of things happening with an athlete. Whereas REM sleep, it's definitely going to be present in the reaction time, decision making, lapses in attention, your ability to react to a stimulus, like missing a tackle in rugby, maybe taking a shot in basketball. And there's a very good study that actually shows the opposite, where when players increase their sleep, from a study by Sherry Mai at Stanford, when players increase their sleep up to nearly 10 hours a night, the time in bed was 10 hours, but the sleep increased up to 8-9 hours per night, that their free throw accuracy for 3-pointers improved, their reaction time improved, their 20-meter sprint time improved. All of these things improved as well because they were getting more sleep. But to answer your question, like I said, we've got the non-REM. It's going to impact the physical, how people feel, getting sick and so on. And then obviously the REM is going to be more the reaction time and so on.
Now, I think that's all very helpful. It's good to know that there's studies and research that have shown both things. They've shown the lack and the symptoms that come about because of lack of sleep, and also the converse. Because just because there's a lack of sleep doesn't necessarily mean getting more improves things, but to have studies that show it does is also really encouraging. And particularly with that basketball study, I think I've come across that one. They're using metrics that are very regularly tested in basketball. Like you said, 20-meter sprint time and free throw accuracy, three-pointers, things like that are regularly checked. So to see that those things improve is fantastic. Now, you mentioned something really important there, which is that when an athlete or an individual is underslept, that typically we're not very good at setting our norms at our 0 point, and we don't really realize we're underslept as well as we should. So what signs and symptoms could we look for to indicate that we may not be recovering effectively, we may not be sleeping as well as we should?
Well, I think the most apparent one is going to be how you feel during the day, across the day, and we call it daytime sleepiness. So, are you feeling really tired and groggy when you wake up? Now, obviously, to some degree, people are going to wake up and feel a bit groggy. That's called sleep inertia. But after sort of an hour or so, we've got these normal biological rhythms that happen, increase in cortisol, increase in body temperature throughout the day. You're going to expose yourself to sunlight. You're going to be out and about. You're going to be working as normal or training, whatever it may be. But if you keep feeling tired across that time, then there may be an issue. Are you feeling excessively tired during the day? Are you sitting at your desk nodding off constantly? Do you feel tired after you eat something? If you sit down and you watch a movie, do you fall asleep? Do you go to the movies with a partner and you instantly fall asleep in a cool, dark room? Do you get drowsy at the traffic lights driving the car? These are all kind of signs of what we call daytime sleepiness, and this might indicate that there's something going on overnight with the person that they may not be getting enough sleep. Now, the other thing I think it's important to identify here as well is, Ben, that some people may be allowing 10 hours for sleep, and they might be in bed for 10, but they may only be achieving 6. So people often get quite frustrated at this and think, well, look, Ian, I'm going to bed for 10 hours. I'm doing everything you say. I'm not looking at electronic devices. I'm relaxing before bed. I'm doing everything. What else can I do? These people may have what's called a sleep disorder. So the American Academy of Sleep Medicine have, kind of now, I think as of this year, it's 70 odd different sleep disorders that's out there. And they're broken into different groups like respiratory sleep disorders, movement sleep disorders, parasomnias, people sleepwalking and so on. So people may have any one of these sleep disorders. And approximately, somewhere around 1 in 3 or 33% of the population will be affected by a sleep disorder. And so that may be affecting your ability to achieve sleep overnight as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine that if someone suspects or anticipates it might be a problem, they really should seek out a sleep medicine doctor or practitioner.
Now, that's a very important point, Ben, because I've seen too many people jump online or go to a so-called expert when they're not an expert. So I think it's really, really important that you do go to the right person. So in general, in most countries in the Western world, you will go to your GP, you will get a referral to a sleep and neuroscience practitioner probably in around the UK, Ireland, or a sleep and respiratory physician here in Australia, or a board certified sleep person in the US as well. Now you may be referred to a clinical psychologist specializing in sleep, a sleep physician who might do some testing, or you may work with someone like me. I often get referrals from those type of people who would work with me to do some scheduling, actigraphy, monitoring, coaching, whatever it might be over time as well. But it's really important that you go to somebody as reputable. So as quickly as you Google somebody to help you, be as quick to Google their qualifications and their background. Because one of the things we have in this area, and it's not about money for anybody like me, because I give out so many free resources, as you know, on Sleep for Performance, podcasts, blogs, downloads, everything. It's not about the money for me, but I see so many people getting taken for a ride, getting sold a bed, getting sold a mattress, getting sold a pillow, getting sold some technology, just basically getting sold and getting conned when the issue could have been solved with, a conversation for 20 minutes, and we've rapidly changed athletes' sleep and wake patterns after a 20-minute conversation. It's changed their lives. So please Google these people and don't start following the charlatans that's out there.
Yeah, sure. That's good advice. Of course, we should be looking for people who, as you said, are reputable and are able to give clear and qualified advice for sure. Now, there's another side to this, I think, which is interesting, because you talked there about people who try to sleep and they're putting in the hours in bed but struggling to stay asleep. And perhaps one of the things that can be an issue there is linked to stress. And I just wonder whether you might just take a moment to explain how stress physiology and sleep physiology are linked together, and does one precede the other or vice versa?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't think this area has been actually that well researched from what I've read or what I know. And if some people can prove me wrong, please do send everything through. I'm definitely willing to look at it. But there's been some stuff around as I think probably low level in terms of subjective measures or self-reported or how people, identify what stress is. But we see this a lot. We see this a lot with high-level athletes. So to give people a bit of a background, I've worked now in Formula One, Australian rules football, Super Rugby, Judo, UFC, and some other individual athletes as well. Like, so like kind of at a lot of high level. So you get to see kind of what the stress is for these players, coaches, and supporting staff.
It'd be quite significant, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and also as well, we see this in industry as well, with high-level executives, managing directors, CEOs, and so on as well. And so the stress so in general, if you have stress and you're working late and you're trying to get lots of things done, it's going to artificially, or sort of, to use a word artificially, may not be the correct word, but it's going to increase cortisol, a stress hormone, at the wrong time of day. So really what we want to see at nighttime or in the evening, so it's like what? It's like nearly 6 o'clock here at night. So gradually, we're going to see the sun going down. It's going to be sunset around 7:30. We're going to see a dip naturally in our cortisol. Body temperature is going to go down. Melatonin is going to start secreting, as the evening goes on. But if you start continually and constantly increasing cortisol through being on your laptop, answering work emails, you're watching, Game of Thrones on your Netflix smart TV, people are screaming and roaring, that's going to have an effect because your cortisol is going to be increased, your body temperature is going to be increased, and that's all going to impact your ability to basically secrete or make available melatonin into your system. So you're going to impact that. So you're going to delay your time of sleep onset. So that kind of stress that you induce into your life in the evening is all going to negatively impact it as well. Or if you're sitting there reading like a textbook at night and you're trying to study for an MBA exam or whatever it might be, or you got kids screaming and roaring and you're trying to do all these things at once. So that's why we say to people about having control over their sleep environment. Also as well, if people have got a sleep disorder or they have problems sleeping and they get themselves into a bad habit or a bad routine, and then they don't have enough time to go to sleep, or they're going to sleep and they can't sleep. So some people may be insomniacs. This also creates stress as well. So people get themselves in this kind of negative cycle or negative spiral. And a lot of times then what happens is people get so frustrated they start turning to things like alcohol. Or if I have a few drinks, that'll make me feel sleepy and I fall asleep. Now alcohol might make you fall asleep, but it's going to disrupt your sleep after a couple of hours being asleep. Lots of disturbances in your brain. We see this in EEG. So it's not really going to help. Or during the day, we see people having excessive caffeine usage, and caffeine has got a full life of about 8 hours in the system. It takes about half an hour to an hour to peak and 4 hours then for a half-life. So if people are having caffeine throughout the day constantly, and then taking maybe pre-workouts in the evening and then having coffee after dinner, that's also going to impact their ability to sleep, which then is going to cause more stress. So for some people, any intervention is going to help, but we got to start somewhere. So this kind of stress thing can be reinforced by the person as well. But as quickly as we can undo one of those, we can undo more as well. So as quickly as you went into this downward spiral, we can get you out of it very quickly as well with some good, what we call sleep hygiene or sleep habits every day to try and reduce that stress. But what I will say, Ben, is that I've seen too many people at the moment recently who will be on their laptop, and this is a common scenario, and everybody laughs when I say it because it's true. This is what they say. They actually laugh because they laugh out and go, oh, that's exactly what I do. They sit on the couch with a glass of wine, a laptop on their lap, a phone here, Netflix going on the TV. They're working, answering emails or catching up or doing something. They're drinking a glass of wine and they're messaging somebody on Facebook Messenger or whatever it might be, all while Netflix is on the background. Then they'll turn off everything, brush their teeth and jump into bed, and they'll lie there listening to a podcast, maybe playing on their phone, turn it all off and then go, Jesus, I can't sleep. What's wrong with me?
Yeah, and it's so obvious when you say it like that, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's so common and so many people do it. So that's why we advocate, for an hour before bed, not to be on email, try to reduce electronic device usage, try to have, if you want to have a glass of wine, give yourself at least a break of 1 or 2 hours before you go to sleep. All of these things will help. No caffeine after 2 p.m. in the afternoon. These are all simple little things that can help you get into a good sleep habit.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think it's just one of those things that we have so much technology available to us today, and we're constantly looking for things to stimulate our mind.
Yeah,
I've also seen where people find when you ask them to switch those things off, they actually struggle initially because they're used to such high level stimulus, even late into their evenings, and they find it almost too much to allow just some quiet time with their own thoughts. Have you found
yeah.
that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah. And I tried to go on a silent retreat once a year, just for a weekend, like 2 or 3 days, where there's a local monastery here about 60 kilometers outside of the city, and you go there and do a silent retreat, some meditation. And it's really interesting because you turn off your phone and you just unplug from society, and 3 days feels like a lifetime. But also as well, like my sleep improves straight away. I don't feel as tired. I don't feel that massive sleep drive either because I'm not in that stress situation either. And so I don't just kind of crash and burn. And even within 3 days, I can undo myself very quickly. And that's a nice break just to create space. And I think, I don't want to sound like I'm philosophizing and tell people how to live their lives, but if you're really stressed out and you're not sleeping well and your health is bad, you got to create some space for yourself. And I'm just as bad as anybody. I got about 50 titles in my job description here that I'm working on. I'm constantly jumping around like a frog from one thing to the other, like I said before.
Uh-huh.
But sometimes I have to just sit down and go, look, that's it. I've done enough for today. I'm going to go and spend some time with my wife. We're going to go for a walk. We're going to go to bed early. We're going to go out and have some, whatever it might be. I've got to create some space. And I try to do that, actually. I try to keep my Sundays virtually sacred. So
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's a
might do
good
a little
one.
bit of work on it. Like I might do a little bit of work on a Saturday morning, do some training. But from about 2 o'clock on Saturday, I try to unplug until Monday morning and give myself, that sort of 36 odd hours there of a break, particularly
Mhm,
on the Sunday. Not for any religious reasons, just because I find it's the easiest day in the week
mhm.
because most people are off.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I do the same thing. To be honest, Sundays is a day where work is not happening. I don't even turn anything
Yeah,
on. It's a day for family time, relax time. Like you said, it helps to reset. And
yeah.
like you said, it may be for some people religious, but it doesn't have to be. I read um, from some experts in business in the world who said that to be truly successful, you have to switch off at least one day a week. And
I think even Gandhi did that. I think Gandhi, even when he was protesting against the British, took one day off a week where he wouldn't do anything.
yeah, and I think that's
And,
important
he,
that
and
we
he'd a lot on his plate, Gandhi. He'd more on his plate than I did.
Sure he did. He had half the whole Indian nation on his plate.
So someone's going, I can't believe he's comparing himself to Gandhi.
For sure.
It's a joke. It's a joke. Relax.
Now, let's just tweak what we've been talking about just a little. So we've talked a little about stress physiology, and this perhaps will lead into this next question a bit, which is many athletes when they're training, one of their objectives is to improve recovery and the
Yeah.
processes of recovery. And part of that is muscle protein synthesis, being able to regenerate tissue that has been traumatized or damaged during training. Now, that happens on a microscopic level each time we train hard. And so can you perhaps explain how muscle physiology recovers from exercise during a night of sleep, and then how might somebody optimize that?
I don't know if I can, Ben, to be honest with you, because I'm not a physiologist, so I don't really know. But what I would say is you might want to have a look at people like Melissa Skine, Skein.
Mm-hmm.
She's done some stuff of this in rugby league players where she looked at the recovery from poor sleep overnight. So that's really the only kind of background I have in this area. So I'm not too sure about what's going on there. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to kind of step outside my cage.
Fair enough. Good for
But
you.
I know Melissa has done some stuff on this, and there is an impact with lower sleep duration and the effect on that the next day.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would say about how to optimize or how to maximize this recovery and repair, I think again it's about what we've been saying about creating that time for sleep and recovery.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will say about this is that it can be difficult for athletes who train late in the evening or for athletes after a game. I think Melissa looked at rugby league players specifically. So in a contact sport, this even may be worse. And with a contact sport, and I found similar in Super Rugby, very difficult for these guys to get to sleep after a game
Mm-hmm.
and very difficult for them to maintain sleep after a game as well. So it impacts their recovery. So you got to look at the time available for sleep, the sleep duration, giving them more time in on the next day to actually sleep in. So there's no point in getting them up the next morning at 7 o'clock to go down to the beach and do a recovery session in cold water because all you're doing is reducing their actual sleep duration or sleep opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And also as well, bring them back in on a Monday morning at 7 o'clock to train really hard. So you should try to be, basically making as much time available as you can in those days to
Mm-hmm.
maximize sleep duration. But
I think you raise an important point there, Ian,
Yeah.
because, more and more sport is being pushed into the evening times because of
Yeah.
television, because people want to
Yeah.
watch. And therefore it has to be at antisocial times, not antisocial, during people's social times, which is when
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
outside of work. So obviously for many athletes, their working time, their competing time is in the evenings, sometimes quite late. I've seen a lot of football games now pressing on till 10 o'clock or later. The recent World Athletics last year, because of where it was positioned in Doha, they ended up doing some races really late at night. One, to get the cooler temperatures, and then two, because of the broadcasting times that they were trying to maximize it in Western nations. And so when you look at that, how can an athlete manage that process of, I need to sleep during night? Like you said, we're diurnal creatures. We're supposed to sleep at night, but yet my sport demands that I have to participate and compete at those times and drive my cortisol through the roof.
Yeah, it's definitely a factor. It's we see this time and time again, and then people expect people to be sort of alert and awake and on par at these times, and then sort of up the next morning doing the same thing as well. So you're expected to be, you know, sort of on performance, or like you're saying, in some of these soccer games at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, or people run these races overnight and then just be normal the next day. It's extremely difficult.
Mm.
The other thing I would say as well, similar to combat sport athletes, if you are going to compete at those times and it is a big event where there's money involved or there's, world records on the line, you need to be training to get ready for that.
Right. So
You
they
need to
should be
start
training
slowly.
late. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, potentially, or earlier, whatever it may be. So you got to take into account, maybe there's going to be travel to that location, and you got to take into account the time of the event.
Right.
For example, if you're a UFC fighter and you're on the main card and you're fighting on the headliner, like you're at Conor McGregor or whoever it might be, and your fight is at 12 midnight Las Vegas time, there's no point in you getting up every morning at 5:30, being like Rocky and running around the streets of Limerick or Galway or wherever you are, shadow boxing while people are coming out of the pub. You're just training your body there to basically be alert at the wrong time of day.
Mm.
Plus, you're going to go to bed early at night. You're completely desynchronized from when you're going to fight. And also as well, you're potentially reducing the sleep opportunity that you may be getting. This whole thing, I think too many people follow this Rocky movie thing or, rise and grind. While you're sleeping, I'm training. Well, guess what? While he's sleeping or she's sleeping, they're recovering.
Mm-hmm.
So they can
That's a good
beat
point.
you. You're out running around like a lunatic at 4 or 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I've seen so many people do this. And they've come to me for advice. And I'm like, you cannot get up in the morning, run 10Ks at 5:30, work all day as a semi-professional athlete, go to the gym from 7 o'clock at night till 9 o'clock at night and do jiu-jitsu and then sparring and whatever it might be, go home, have dinner, get into bed at 12 o'clock and get 8 hours sleep to get back up at 5 o'clock. It's 5 hours. That's
Mm.
all you've made available. You can't jam 8 hours into 5 hours.
Mm.
And I go, like, it's just not possible. It's basic mathematics. I talk about improving my maths. Well, there you go. There's some simple maths straight away. And that's all that people need to even look at. It's like, how much time are you making available? And what I said to everybody, whether you're an athlete, professional, amateur, semi-pro, you're working, whatever it might be, you should be allowing 10 hours for sleep and recovery between stuff. So for example, if you work 9 to 5 every day and you want to go home or go to the gym, have some dinner, and you want to get up then the next morning, you got to be in work at 9, you want to get up at 7, you should be going to bed, you want to be getting between 11 and 7 is your 8 hours sleep. So you might want to be going to bed like 9:30, 10. So, but you're allowing sort of 10 hours of a break between these work cycles that you can get this 8 hours of sleep in, where you can wind down, relax for sleep, wake up in the morning, have a shower, brush your teeth, whatever it might be, have a cup of coffee. So giving yourself that time either side of that sleep opportunity to maximize it. Because if you keep reducing that opportunity, you can't do it. You just can't.
Yeah. And I think that's so important because, like you said, so often people are doing things right to the moment they go to bed. And then as soon as they're up, their phone and emails is the first thing they're checking when they wake up. And there isn't actually space before sleep and after sleep, to allow their body to function and wind down and then wind back into the day. And so if you're after, your minimum of ideal of 7, then like you said, you're probably going to need 8.5 hours of time to ensure you've got an hour wind down and half an hour wake up time.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. Now, it leads to another thought process, which is that when, people are struggling to meet their sleep needs and to find those important 7 to 9 hours, is that going to potentially then have an impact on their mental functioning? So, an athlete, to be able to perform at their highest level needs to have the psychology game down. In what ways can a lack of sleep or chronic lack of sleep have an impact upon how they think and function?
This is a real interesting area, and I think it's brand new in athletes. So if you look at Michael Gradner, who I had in the podcast a few months ago, I think I had him on November episode. Myself and Michael spoke at World Sleep last year on a symposium that Michael put together, and he kindly invited me along to speak at that in Vancouver in September. This is a whole area that Michael is getting into, and I think where we haven't even delved into before. It's actually growing in industry. So we see this a lot in mining, oil and gas, military, the relationship between mental health and other occupational health areas such as sleep and recovery, performance, and so on. So I think on one hand, it's growing in industry, and now we're starting to see it coming into athletes as well. So this can be kind of two directional. If someone's got an underlying mental health issue, it may be affecting their ability to sleep. Or if somebody has an issue with sleep, it may be affecting their mental health. So if they have an underlying issue, it might be exacerbating that as well. So we know that people with mental health issues, and Russell Foster from Oxford, who does some work here with us at University of Western Australia, who actually was my PhD examiner, Russell was here in Western Australia last year. We did a bit of a forum talking to industry about this, is that when people have like things like schizophrenia or other sort of issues where they might be homeless, for example, we see people free running with sleep, so they're sleeping at odd times, their sleep is fragmented, so they might be sleeping during the day, awake at night, and we see this kind of what we call free running across their circadian rhythm when we measure and monitor sleep. So in some extreme examples, that could be a case there as well. The other area we don't know as well is like what's happening with CTE and sleep. We don't know that, I don't think, too well in terms of what's the impact on that.
CTE,
how's that
what's
affecting?
that?
CTE is like, if you've seen that movie Concussion with Will Smith, about the head impact.
Right.
Don't get me to pronounce CTE because it takes me a few minutes to get it out of my mouth.
Yeah, no worries. I remember the movie. I've seen that one. Yeah, so it's people who get repetitive head trauma, and it causes issues with inflammation on the brain. That's what it is.
Inflammation, and again, it's not my area of expertise. But I know another guest I had on my podcast, Dr. Meeta Singh, who just worked with the winning baseball team in the US around sleep and performance and recovery. She also works with the NFL around this area as well. So she might be able to, shed some more light on this issue. But I think that's another area that's growing as well, about head trauma or PTSD in veterans and so on. So I think we're starting to see a lot of this kind of thing heading in the same direction. So to answer your question, if somebody has a lack of sleep, it may potentially bring on an underlying mental health issue that we didn't know about before. And sort of when they're getting low sleep or traveling, it may do this in terms of like anxiety, even of these what we call common mental health disorders. So anxiety, depression, any of these things may be even presented as well. And we do know, is actually from some of the other papers, with the stress of competition, like Laura Juleff has run a study at the IIS a number of years ago. I think it was 2015 it was published, where they looked at sort of sleep disturbances before competition training and so on, and the difference between athletes who were in teams or organizations versus those in individuals. And about 67%, I think, from memory, reported having sleep disturbances, where those in team sports had them generally after a game, and those in individual-based sports had it the night before a game.
Wow.
So, which kind of makes sense, because an individual, it's all kind of reliant on them.
Yeah, pressure.
The spotlight's going to be on them. Where a team-based, it's more about the team and how they function as a team. And then after the team, you often have like post-game celebration and so on. So, we see a lot of stuff happening as well. But Michael has been working with the Olympic Committee on this issue around mental health and athletes. So I think we're going to see a lot more coming out of that. And we're seeing a lot of stuff happening now also with athletes as well, which is similar but different, around like resilience and their ability for mental toughness and how to overcome challenges. So I think there's one part is about mental toughness / resilience is one component, but then mental health is a kind of a separate but similar type thing as well, because I think resilience and mental toughness is very different in mental health. And again, I'm not an expert in this area, but what I'm seeing and where it's going is quite interesting. And another emerging issue as well, Ben, is the area around chrononutrition. So I had Charlotte Gupta on my podcast recently talking about this as well. So for me, I think mental health and chrononutrition the timing of meals and fasting and shift workers and performance and travel. These are two kind of new novel areas that are coming out in the sleep and performance area that we will see come out.
I think that's really fascinating. I'd love to go into the chrononutrition, but we're nearly out of time, and that would be a whole new topic right there. So let's hold that one. With regards to the mental toughness, the resilience, I've seen some research that suggests that individuals who are underslept have a lower perception of exertion, so their RPE scores tend to be higher. They don't seem to cope as well with the same level of effort that when they're well slept they could have coped with just fine. How does that sort of feed into this mental toughness and sort of motivation to do exercise if someone is underslept?
It's an interesting one. I think it depends on a number of different factors from what I've seen. So this is more anecdotal in my experience. Okay. I think it depends on the person. Again, I don't know. I can't put my finger on any good studies at the moment that have looked at all these variables and kind of come out with the magic answer. Again, if there is, please send them to me. I haven't actively been looking for them. But for me, it depends on the person. Depends on their background. I think if you look at some books that were written like about grit, for example, it depends on their childhood, who they are, what type of person they are. It also depends. So you got all that kind of background thing. So what's behind them? What's brought them to this position? Mm-hmm. So, you know, what's their background? How did they grow up? What's their experiences? What's their frame of references? Have they done something similar? Have they ran a long distance race if they're going to do a long distance swim? Have they done a long distance cycle if they're going to have a boxing match? Whatever it might be. So have they kind of gone through this adversity before that brings them to this spot? But more importantly, I think what mental toughness and mental resilience is as well is about what's the goal, what you're trying to achieve. Like, why are you doing it? What's in it for you? Mm-hmm. You know, and as a personal example, like when I ran Leadville 100 miler, very difficult race at altitude. For me, that was about getting that buckle, which is like very few people have that buckle, achieving that race. But for me, I wanted to do that event. I wanted to tick that kind of, you know, goal and achieve that. So for me, I took elements of my rugby background, my military background, you know, where I grew up, whatever it might be, into that race with me that helped me be mentally tough. Mm-hmm. You know, in even like studying part-time and going like you worked, you studied part-time, you traveled for work, you did all these things, you can do this. It's only 20 something hours you got to do this for.
And also then, goodness sake.
Yeah, but it's
just 20 hours.
But that's what you got to do, Ben. You got to kind of break it down and say, why am I doing this? What is the rationale? Because I think fundamentally, like I'm about to taper for a 20K ocean swim at the moment, which is swimming to an island here off Perth. So 20K is quite long.
It's a long old way.
Yeah, particularly when I started swimming 2 years ago. But why do I want to do it? Because I want to achieve that. Like I really want to do it. I did a duo last year. You know, and I'd never been to Rottnest Island, even though it's 20 k's away, and I've been living here for 17 years. So the first time to go, the novel part was I swam the first time I went there.
Oh wow!
So that was kind of something novel to do. But now I want to do it because I want to do something else next year, and I got something else. I got other challenges, so I want to do it to achieve. But now we're starting to talk about we're going to do it. We're doing it this year to help a friend of ours who's got type 1 diabetes, who was on my last episode of my podcast, to help raise money for her. And we're trying to raise, you know, up to $100,000 to help her. So there's a reason there. There's a personal,
there's a motivation.
There's a motivation there to help as well. So I think these things are really important as well. And I think if you have a reason and a rationale and a goal for anything that you're doing in life, you will do whatever it takes to get there. You will stop drinking. You will stop smoking. You will lose weight. You will gain muscle. Whatever it is you got to do, you will pay attention to sleep and recovery. So I think around these things, it's about, why am I doing it? What's the goal? And then you'll organize your life around that, you know? And I think
let me just draw on that personal example real quick. Sorry for jumping in there. You've mentioned there that you're training for this endurance event, this 20-kilometer swim. Because I'm sure, you know, you understand about sleep, and I'm sure you do your best to try and sleep well, but I'd imagine there's been times when you haven't got a great sleep. How has that affected the way you are motivated or your toughness on a training session the next day if you haven't had such a good sleep?
That's a great question. I get asked that a lot because we often train early in the morning. So like after this podcast, I'm going to go and swim like about 4Ks this evening with a group. Wow. And then on Mondays and Tuesdays, I'll get up at like, you know, 10 to 5, 4:50 and go swim anywhere from 4 to 5 kilometers, and the same on a Saturday morning. Some nights are good. Some nights are bad. But that's just what it is. It is what it is. There's no point in sitting around moaning and groaning about it. Mm-hmm. I've got to make changes throughout the day to overcome that. But that's the goal I want to achieve, and this is what it takes. And I haven't missed one training session this year, and I haven't got sick, so I know I'm doing something right. Because on days where I'm overly pushing or exerting myself, I might schedule a nap or go to bed earlier, you know,
Right, so you work around it.
Diet. I work around it. I've cleaned up my diet, and it is what it is. You got to meet it head on. If you look at people like, Michael Phelps, and when he was training for some of his swims, he would swim with like water in his goggles. He would put himself in uncomfortable positions because his coach would go, right, do the 100-meter freestyle, put water in your goggles so you know what it's like when you got chlorine burning into your eyeballs. Mm-hmm. It's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be how it is, but it is what it is. And sort of, you've got to just get up and push through it, and you've got to get through that session, that next 100 meters, that next, kilometer, whatever it might be. But in saying that, if I do feel sick, or I do need to take a break, or I do need to reduce my load on the day, I will do things like put on a set of fins in the pool. I will, take 100 meters off here extra. I will, look at my nutrition. I will schedule in a nap. I will do those things to balance it out. So I think it's really important to look at it holistically about how you're approaching your training. But sometimes, Ben, I think you have to just kind of bite down your mouthpiece and just keep going sometimes. Too often we just give up. And if we really want to achieve something, we really will do it. I'm not saying we have to do it to the detriment of ourselves or others, but sometimes I think we just tend to be lazy and just make excuses.
So I think that's a great piece to end on, just to step up and be a bit more resilient, and but then be smart enough to recognize when you need to adjust and adapt to ensure that your body can manage. I think that's great. So just to finish on then, Ian, how can listeners find out a little bit more about you, your research, and the work that you're doing?
So you can head over to Sleep for Performance. That's 4performance.com.au. We got a website there with free downloads, podcasts, everything is kind of there. There's a few little videos there. My TEDx Perth talk is there from 2017. A few other media things are there. You can send me an email via that website as well. That's probably the main place to go to, on Twitter, Instagram, the whole lot. So yeah, go to the website or on Facebook. We'd love to hear from people out there if you got ideas. So even from this podcast today, Ben, there's a few areas I'm going to look into myself around muscle protein synthesis and a few others as well that I got to brush up on too, and sort of so we like to hear those kind of things back from our listeners as well. And the podcast is all on iTunes and Spotify and all those platforms. So jump on, have a listen to those. There's about, I think, 50 episodes now. There's audio abstracts where I break down papers. There's people on there like professional athletes. There's scientists on there. So some of the people I spoke about today, we've interviewed them as well. So have a scroll through those and pick a few episodes and have a listen.
Excellent. And I can definitely endorse that. I've listened to a few of your podcasts, Ian, and they're always very fascinating. So really appreciate your time. It's been a fascinating discussion. We've got into some really fun areas, and hopefully some people can take away some of the messages that you've shared about how to optimize sleep, how to improve performance, and how to build that mental toughness that you've talked about. Thanks so much, Ian.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share via social media. You can also rate the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. If you'd like to know more about us, then check out our range of online courses at www.nordicfitnesseducation.com.